So far in this video series, we've shown how to make very basic text links inside content blocks, as well as you can do this in accordions as well. But if you want to make a link that's more eye-catching and more important for the user to find, that's a good use case for the button block, or one or more buttons if you want to make a collection of them. So how we go about adding a button to a page is to open the block menu via the Add Content button, and then look for the button block. We can scroll for that or search for it by looking for the word button. Then we'll grab that block type and drag it into wherever we want it to go. In my case, I want to say, after all this text content, have a button that leads away to some other important page. So we'll drop that block into there. And we get this rather busy looking settings panel. This is basically a form that can be broken down into two key parts. This first settings panel is all about where the button links to, and then this display half is just about what the button looks like. So we'll start with just where it links to. We can link to all sorts of different things, pages, files, or like social media platforms if you've got those pre-built into the CMS. But more than likely, you'll prioritize using pages, files, telephone, URL, or email, the same way you would with basic text links. And we can see as we change the link type, we get different settings. So if I choose a file, I'm given a button to choose from the file manager. Whereas if I choose page, I get an option to choose from the sitemap, and so on and so forth. So let's make a link to a page elsewhere on the site. So I'll just have it set to page and choose the page. I'll be shown the sitemap, and I'll just pick a page from somewhere on the site. So let's say the Who We Are page. And from there we get some more advanced options, like for example, if you've made an anchor on the site, on this page or the page you're going to, and you know the ID for that, as per this example here, you would type in the ID or name of that anchor. So let's say we've got some sort of quote on the page we're going to, and we've marked it with an anchor, and we've just called it quote. We would then type in that keyword, and then you would get sent to the Who We Are page with the page scroll down to the anchor called quote. So if you need more details about how anchors work, we've got a video for that later in the series, or you can also see it being mentioned in the content block video as well. But we'll keep this simple. In this case, we'll just link directly to the page wholesale, and let's just add that for now and see how that looks. So we see in the case of this site I'm using, buttons by default are blue with white text, and by default have this right-facing arrow. And we can see it's already smartly picked up on the name of the page I happen to be linking to. So if you want your buttons to be dynamic when they're targeting certain pages, you can just leave the display options as is and just let the button figure out what the name of the page it's going to is. So in the future, if Who We Are gets renamed as a page, this particular button will know to rename itself to be whatever the page says then when it gets changed. But if we want to be more direct about controlling the display of the button, we can go in again and go to Edit Block. And this time we'll go to the Display panel. And let's skip Display for a second and look at Style. So we have Default here, and we have different options about arrow left, arrow right. It seems in the case on this site, arrow right is a default anyway, but just know that your site might be different and you might have a more sort of plain button by default, and arrow left and arrow right prefabs for you to use. You've also got things like custom icons, so we could say make my own icon and upload it. If if you have SVG images and stuff, you can use those, or you can pick from a large preset list of icons, so we can choose that. And then say, let's pretend this was a link to well, this is a page called Who We Are. Let's see if we have an icon for people or group. Let's settle for this address card here. And then we can choose if the icon we've preset is going to show on the left or right side of the button. And then vitally here, as per this example, rather than have the button just dynamically figure out the name of the page it's going to, I could have this say something like read more, for example. And then with that, we'll save our change, although let's mention this title text. If you've seen the other videos about making links and keeping them accessible, know that this is similar to the advisory text you'd give a basic link. So in my case, the button's just going to say read more, if you want to give some more context for, say, visually impaired users who are scanning the button content as they focus on it with their screen reading tools, it can read out whatever extra text you give it here. Likewise, if users using a mouse over the button, they'll see the advisory text or title text appear as well. So you can use this to better elaborate what text you're using, or where the link is going, rather. So for example, I can key in this text, and that will show up as an advisory piece of text on mouse hover or screen reader focus as well. So we'll save our button now. We'll see it now says read more rather than whatever the live page name is, and we've got our custom icon in there as well. As for these other settings, if we go into edit block again and look at display, so by default we have this display mode called block or stacked and inline called side by side. What this means is with the block setting, which is the default one, this is telling the button to have an entire row to itself when it's placed into the copy or into the page. If I were to add a second button beneath this, then when the page is properly live, the second button would be beneath it as well, because it would be pushed down by this button taking a line to itself. So let's actually mock that up by making a second button. And I'll quickly throw together a link to any old page. And we'll see this how it looks in edit mode, but we know these two are both set to this sort of blocked layout. So we'll save our changes to preview that. And we'll see each button takes up a whole line to itself. And let's say these are the only two buttons I want. I want them to be side by side because they are of equal importance, so I just prefer that layout. So we'll go back into edit mode. Then we'll find both of these buttons and set them both to be capable of being inline button layouts. So we'll go to display, set the display mode to inline or side by side. And we'll do the exact same for the other button as well, because if either of them are set to block, then they will take up a whole row to themselves. So we'll set both of these to inline. And whilst we're in edit mode, all blocks take up full width like this, which is why we're going to go to save our changes first to preview the real layout. And now we can see both of these buttons set to inline allows them to collapse onto a single row like this. And it's worth noting that if you have multiple of these buttons, then they'll keep wrapping kind of like text until they hit the edge of the space they're in. At which point, if you've got any more beyond that, they'll collapse to a second line, very much like text. And it does mean it's naturally responsive as well, meaning that as people visit this page on smaller devices, these buttons will naturally collapse to be beneath each other if they need to be as well. So feel free to use this as liberally as you may need to in certain cases, knowing that it will collapse down to different screen sizes accordingly as well without anything running over to the right side.